It is certainly good to be back and see so many friends here, and we always look forward to our time with the Ripon congregation. And send greetings from Mariposa, and hope everyone has had a great week. I know there's a lot of trying times, and a few that have been mentioned this morning, but so we would certainly want to be sensitive of those, and our prayers go out to you. And we've had some in our congregation as well. Um, if you can keep our the son of one of our elders, Jim Ferris, and some may know Jim in here. He is right now fighting, literally fighting for his life. He needs a liver transplant just to be able to survive. And he has full blown cirrhosis of the liver. And he was getting better for a little bit and then was supposed to get out of the hospital one day and looking forward to coming home. And all of a sudden, he got the announcement about the liver. And so they're looking for donors right now, I guess, for or a pool of donors that they could try to help him with that. So if you know of anyone, just keep him in prayer that that someone or that they'll be able to find a donor for him. I know that would the family would certainly appreciate that. It was May of 2003. Katie and I were getting ready to, we had our wedding plans in the works, and we were planning on getting married that year from in September. And so, we traveled back and forth from Los Angeles, which is where we lived at the time, and Sacramento, and trying to get things done, which is kind of chaotic, when you have to drive that distance just for 1 or 2 days of planning. But it was one morning that we were traveling from there on the 99 freeway, and we were getting close to Delano. It was in the morning, and so there wasn't a lot of traffic. We were going probably about 70 miles an hour, as we do, and I love people that come in from out of town. You guys drive too fast, but we were going about 70 miles an hour on the freeways. There was an on ramp in Delano, and as we were getting closer to this on ramp, there was an SUV that pulled onto the freeway. We could see him up ahead, but we didn't think too much of it. And we were like in the middle lane or left lane, and he pulled into the right lane, and he was going really rather slow. And we were getting closer and closer, really accelerating, getting fast, or going this speed that we were, but he was not. And it was really sort of unusual that someone would be going that slow, especially on the freeway. And as we got close to him and approached him, all of a sudden he takes a left-handed turn from that right lane. Not a lane change, but a left, as if he was just turning left. And my wife will tell you that she thought we were going to miss him. I knew we weren't. I saw it coming, and I tightened up and I braced myself, and we clipped him, we T-boned him on the latter part of his, or in the back part of his SUV. And it was, and you could, you felt it. And I closed my eyes, and I remember, waking up, and we were stopped, of course. And I just had the worst pain in my chest. And it was because we hit him at such a fast speed and at such a place that the seatbelt had broken my sternum. You can show this. This is what the aftermath looked like. We were driving in a Honda Civic, and so it wasn't a big car. Katie was driving. She drives everywhere. I don't like driving, so I leave it up to her. But I looked over at the driver's side, and there was Katie, hunched over the wheel. She was bleeding profusely from her head. The head will bleed, and she literally had, as you can see, this is the aftermath. I won't show you the other parts of it because it's really graphic, but the windshield literally landed in her lap, and she hit her head as she went forward and just hunched over the windshield or over the steering wheel, and she wasn't breathing. And it was in that moment I just thought, I just lost the love of my life. We'd been planning, we were excited, and in one moment, I lost the one who I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. And it was about a minute. It seemed long, like a long time. That all of a sudden it's like she grasped for air. She just, and then she just, just whimpering and whimpering. And I just thought, thank God that I still have her. A truck driver had stopped and he got me out of the car. Katie was not so fortunate. They could not get her out. In fact, it took the paramedics with the jaws of life to pry her out of her sight. She was so enclosed, and it was that part of the car was so damaged. The driver of the other car had been drinking the night before, and they still had alcohol in their system. Some time had gone by. We were both in the well. They took us to the hospital in Delano, and we spent the next several days there being tended to. And they were really worried about Katie. Katie had all of the external. They had to have an emergency plastic surgeon come in just to stitch her face back up. Literally, it was just torn up from the windshield. And she had all the external injuries. I had all the internal with the sternum, and my knees were banged up, but she got the worst of it. Some time had gone by. Katie could not remember it because of the impact and hitting her head like it did. She couldn't remember any part of the accident. And I was thankful for that for quite a while. I just every time I got on the freeway, and I would have to drive from Los Angeles down to Anaheim for um, work at the time, and it would just every time I got on there in a truck or something drove past me, I would just tense up and almost have to pull over. But she just went on with it for a while because she didn't remember the accident. And then one night we were watching a TV show. I think it was like Hawaii Five O or something, and they had a camera mounted on the dashboard, and it was so from the point of view of the driver, and it was and there was like a high speed chase, and all of a sudden it crashed into something and just jarred this car, and Katie screamed out, and I said, "What? What's wrong?" We're watching this TV show, and she said, "I remember." And it was took something like that triggered every single thing that we went through. And she said, "I remember everything." And that's what was hard. I'm thankful that she's here with me, but I'm also mindful that it's not the same for everyone when they go through certain things. And I'm even more mindful that this life will someday be over. My life, your life, will someday be over. And we are not guaranteed any sort of time with that. We have no idea how much longer on this earth we will spend. And anything can happen at any time. If you look at Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 2, this really puts it into perspective. Solomon's writing here, and this is in the context of death. I'm going to read out of the ESV. I think it probably lays it out more. It flows a lot more in the ESV, the way it reads. But Solomon writes, "It is the same for all. Since the same event," and he's talking about death in this context, "since the same event happens to the righteous and the wicked, to the good and the evil, to the clean and the unclean, to him who sacrifices and him who does not sacrifice. As a good one is, so is the sinner, and he who swears is as he who shuns an oath." It goes by so fast. And I find that as I get older, and it's probably the same for many here, that I get more sensitive, understanding that we're not guaranteed any amount of time. And we get sensitive to things that happen in our life. And as we have, as we attend these funerals, I attended the funeral yesterday for Elmer Prout, who is a longtime gospel preacher in the Northern California, 99 years old. And what work he did. And I just, as you start, getting older and older, you really, life really does start to just come into view and the end of it. And realize, have I got everything? Have I got everything in place for when that time comes? Sadly, there's a lot of people that are unprepared. It's hard to believe it was about 25 years ago. The young people won't remember this, but most of us will. 25 years ago, December 31st, 1999, going into that new year, and you probably know where I'm going with this. There was one thing, a lot of people were celebrating, oh, we're going to go into this new millennium and this is going to be great, but there's a lot of people who were just scared out of their mind. Why? It was Y2K, wasn't it? And we heard all of the conspiracy theories, and there were so many different emotions with Y2K. There was hysteria that was going on. There were, computers were supposed to crash. No computer was supposed to turn on. The most sophisticated computers that they had out on the market, that they were trying to pitch to us and sell to us, and those were not ready for Y2K. And all the government computers were supposed to shut down, and everything was just, our whole security system in this nation, we're going to be vulnerable, and our borders were not going to be secure. And that was just the computers. There were other people that just thought it was going to be the end of the world. They were convinced it's the end of the century. It's going to be, and everyone is going to be, they were convinced that just we're going to have no more time left. This is it. So the end of the world comes. I feel pretty good, by the way. I've lived through a number of end of the world. So, but you think, how did people spend it? The end of the world is right upon us, and how did they spend it? There was panic. The shelves were empty. At that time, I think at least where we lived, I was in Utah at the time, milk was just flying off the shelf. I don't know why people had this needed a stockpile of milk in their house for Y2K, but they did. Milk was, it was kind of like what toilet paper was over this last scare, I guess. But everybody needed milk. And the gas stations, I remember, just had lines of cars going out them. Everybody had to fill up their cars as if they could outrun the end of the world, I guess. But they had these, milk and just got, and that's what I remember about this. But folks, if it was the end of the world, hoarding dairy and gasoline are the wrong things to help me prepare for it. If you look over at 2 Corinthians chapter 5, Paul writes this to Corinth, and I'm glad Corinth was mentioned this morning in Bible class. What a group that was, and what learning they were able to, they developed over time. But Paul writes to the Corinthians, he says, "For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive the things done in the body, according to what he has done, whether good or bad." And folks, there are bad things that we do in life, aren't there? There are things that we certainly regret in life, and there are places that we should not be, things that we should not look at in life. I'm telling you, if you can't defeat your demons, or we cannot defeat our demons if we're keeping company with them. We need to be ready. But what if the world ended? What if it really ended today? How prepared are you? And you ask that question to some people, and they say, well, I've got this bucket list. And all of us have these bucket lists, and we want to go different places and experience different things. And I've got mine that, things that I would like to do, or places. We've got these and some people will actually, they are so tied to those bucket lists. They say, well, I don't want to go until I'm done with this. As if God's looking down and saying, okay, well, I'll just accommodate that list. But then there's this guy over here, and he has even a longer list. So I'll just his life will be longer. But that's not how it works, is it? Every one of us are going to receive the things done in our body according to what we have done, either good or bad. When you ask, though, about preparation, how prepared are you? What's really sobering about this is not just a question that is reserved for non-Christians. How prepared are you? As we sit here in this auditorium this morning, you and me, are we really prepared for that last day? If today was that last day. In Revelation chapter 20, I've been teaching Revelation. I've been doing a series of Revelation on last little while, and just understanding what those early Christians were going through, the persecution. Of course, Revelation is all about the early church being persecuted in that first century. It's not a hard book to understand at all. People get really up in arms, both in the secular and the religious world, about Revelation, and they look to it as if some futuristic book, and it's not. It was for them. They were going through something, and they needed hope for the persecution that Caesar was laying on them. This Roman Empire hated Christ. They hated Christians, and they hated the faith that they were involved with. And so this revelation is given to John to give to these people, to give them hope, and what hope it does provide for them in preparing them, getting them to understand, look, you may die, and there's a good chance that you might. But if you hold on to Christ and hold on to that relationship that you have and stay faithful to him, there's a victory that is much better than anything that you could have on this earth. And you might die, but it's not going to matter because you're going to be with God. In Revelation 20 and verse 12, it's written, I saw the dead, small and great, standing before God, and books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged, look at this, according to their works, by the things which were written in the book. If you were judged according to your works right now, would you be in that book of life? We say, well, there's a couple things I need to iron out, some people I need to contact, some things I need. Well, folks, if today's the day, I should have taken care of that a while ago. Don't let it be something that you put off. It's interesting, in India, if you're walking through rural roads, you'll occasionally come across a post with a sturdy shelf. And it's about shoulder height. And they call it this shelf that you'll find in India, the Somatonga, which means resting place. It's designed so that when people are traveling with heavy loads and they're tired or they just need to rest a little bit, they can place their backpacks or whatever they have on the shelf and sit down, lean on this post, and once they're rested, they can just continue on their journey. The Christians in India called Jesus my Somatonga, my resting place. And how fitting that is. If you look in Revelation chapter 14 and verse 13, and again, this is for those persecuted Christians, but how applicable it is to every person who is able to have that relationship with Christ. We will gain that same victory. But he tells them, I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, right, blessed, Makarios, happy are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, and look at this, that they may rest from their labors and their works follow them. If you're right with Christ, if you're ready to go at any time, we were not going to worry about things in this life. We're not going to worry about those bucket lists that we might leave behind. Because, friends, there's something that's so amazing that awaits us, that's in front of us, something that we can look forward to. I get so envious of Christians, friends, and loved ones who pass away. And of course, it leaves a void in our life, and it's heartbreaking. and it's difficult. And sometimes we can almost not bear it. But when they're faithful to Christ, I get so envious because they beat me there. They are there. And have you ever wondered what do they experience when they pass over in that split moment? We get afraid of death, and we don't have to, but it's because we don't know, do we? But what do they experience? What is that moment like when they say goodbye to everything physical and everything that they have here, and they enter into that eternity? We're given a description in a couple of places, and told about how with Lazarus. But folks, I don't think there's a description in the Bible that is as glorious as heaven is really going to be. God gives us certain things that we can understand from our perspective, from our point of view. I know I can visualize a street of gold. I can visualize jewels. I can visualize a mansion. But I will never be able to comprehend how glorious and magnificent heaven's going to be. But imagine, if you could, your eyes closing for the very last time. And the world that you know is over. You've done everything that you could. There's nothing more that you can do, even if you want, ready or not. There's that last breath. The world that you know is no longer. And immediately, you're in this wonderful, breathtaking, glorious paradise. How amazing that's going to be. And you see the prophets, these men that we read about them and we study them and we read their dialogue and we focus so much attention on just what they did, and they did lead great lives, and it was all to help us. They were chosen for a reason. But you see, when you wake up, you meet the prophets, and you're able to meet and see the Israelites, and you meet the apostles. What a meeting that's going to be. I don't know what I'm going to say to them. I don't get starstruck. I used to work with a lot of actors, and so I don't get stuff. But you get me athletes. There's certain athletes that when I if I meet them, I'm like 10 years old. I can't even imagine how starstruck I might be when if I ever met an apostle. But we're going to meet them, and knowing the work that they did, and just the lives that they lived. And we meet the disciples for the first time. What a meeting! What a setting that is, and how exciting that's going to be to see all of these great men and women in Scripture. But then you see them, a parent, a mother or father that you lost, a child, a brother, a sister, a grandmother, a grandfather, a close friend, a wife, a husband. There they are, and you're there. And you're not limited to a photo. You're not just limited to memories, trying to remember what they look like. Some people really feel guilty because as time goes on, they're afraid that they might not remember their face as it once was or their personality as it once was. But you don't have to worry about that anymore. You don't have to hope that maybe you'll catch a glimpse of them in a dream, because here they are. And they are overjoyed to see you. You made it. Can you imagine someone coming up to you and saying, "Thank you, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you." And God will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying, and there shall be no more pain. Why? Because you know that you're never going to have to say goodbye again. And you're exactly where you want to be. And if it couldn't get any better, you stand face to face for the very first time in all his glory, the Master. He is why we work the way that we do. Will you be there? What if today is the day? What if today is that day? The dead who are clothed in Christ will have a joy that I cannot even begin to comprehend. But at the same time, I know it can be disheartening, because I know there's someone, and that someone may be in here this morning, who is questioning whether they are prepared. They're worried or they're scared because they're unsure if their life is right. Well, here's the good news, is that you do not need to wonder. I don't know the hearts of every person that's in here. I don't know the spiritual state. But you know your spiritual state, and you know if there's anything that needs to be done. And if you don't have that relationship with him, I want to ask that we can sit down and see what the Bible has to say. I would love to sit down and discuss it with you. I know there are good men in this congregation. I know Matt would love to do it. To sit down and see what the Bible has to say so that you can make your life prepared for when that day comes. You see, where you come from and where you are does not have to define where you're going. If you need prayer, if you are anxious or worried, and that's okay, we get that way, you're invited to come forward. Let's leave here this morning, all of us, with confidence and assurance that when we leave this life, we're going to be with those people and have that reunion. Let's